Hello everyone, my name is Patricia Stratford and I am from Carrickfergus Castle Restoration Society. Carrickfergus Castle, also known locally as the Castles. I am going to actually show you a few slides because once you're going to take a walk down to the O'Doherty's Keep, I'm afraid I can't do the same for you this afternoon, so I've got a few slides for you. Carrickfergus Castle and O'Doherty's Keep are just 2 of 4, or maybe that's 5, O'Doherty castles remaining in Inishowen. The other 2 being at Burt and at Inch. Though just outside Derry there are slight remains of Ely Castle, and that was actually a very important O'Doherty castle as well. While the conservation work at Carrickfergus Castle was successfully completed, you can see Carrickfergus Castle there, it was successfully completed as a ruin in 2014. Our shared connection is that the O'Doherty's Keep conservation programme is they're just about to embark on their conservation programme. And ours was at times quite a long and arduous path, and I hope it's a lot easier for the O'Doherty's Keep group. Another very famous connection, and this is purely a snapshot in terms of history, is probably the most famous was the part they played in the 1608 rebellion, led by Sir Cathal O'Doherty, the last Gaelic chieftain in Inishowen, and this revolt was reputed to have been planned at Carrickfergus Castle. In the years leading up to the flight of the Earls, Sir Cathal was known as the Queen's O'Doherty, and in fact he was actually the chairman of the jury that found the Earls guilty of treason following their exodus. There was a certain amount of paranoia on the English side following these events, and Sir Cathal was amongst those Irish lords being closely watched in the aftermath of the flight in September 1607. Now, from Sir Cathal's own account, he left Inishowen to cut wood near Kilmacrenan in late October 1607 for building operations at one of his castles. The departure was reported to the Lord Deputy Sir Arthur Chichester as evidence of rebellion and treason. Upon his return, Sir Cathal went to Carrickfergus Castle and wrote letters to Sir George Paulet, the Governor of Derry, and to Chichester in November of that year, protesting his innocence. He further then went to Dublin to plead his case, whereupon he was imprisoned in Dublin Castle for a number of days, and was only released on bail of £1,000. £1,000 is quite an amount today, so you can imagine what an enormous sum it was then. Sir Cathal's revolt began in earnest in April 1608 when he attacked Culmore Fort and subsequently captured Derry. He used O'Doherty's Keep as a rallying point for his soldiers before capturing Culmore Fort and Derry. Actually, in one of Harry Swan's books, there is a photograph of a collection of swords, daggers and pike heads that were found underneath O'Doherty's Keep, and they were supposed to have belonged to Sir Cathal. Sir Cathal further captured Doe Castle in 1608 and continued to move south through Ulster until the forces of the Crown pushed him back. The decisive encounter occurred at the inauguration site of the O'Donnell's Doom Rock near Kilmacrenna in July 1608, when Sir Kepper, just aged 21, was shot dead and then ended the very ill-fated revolt. And as a reminder to all who might think of embarking on such a rebellion again, the heads of Sir Kepper and fellow rebel William McDavitt were displayed at Newgate in Dublin in 1608. When I was talking to school children a couple of months ago, they were absolutely fascinated by this and were going into great detail, asking me questions. How long do you think the heads were displayed there? And when did they start to rot? And so it all goes back to the horrible histories, probably. Just a little bit, just to explain my background. I am part of a voluntary committee, 12 members in total, referred to as the Carrick-a-Breckie Castle Restoration Society. We got the name wrong at the beginning. It's all about conservation, it's not about restoration, though some could quibble over it. We got together in 2011 to conserve Carrick-a-Breckie Castle as a ruin under the direction of National Monuments. We had lots of meetings. We generally had a meeting every month for about 3 years. We had a good mix of skills. We were from business, IT, academic, tourism, financial, and probably one of the most important skills of our fundraising committee was the person who actually knew how to organise events and make money for us. Carrick-a-Breckie is situated, you can just see up here, that's Carrick-a-Breckie, is situated on the beautiful Isle of Doe, and for those of you who are not familiar with the area, it's not a million miles away from Ballyliffin Golf Club, and you can't fail to notice that the Irish Open was held in Ballyliffin this year. Carrick-a-Breckie Castle, as you can see, has also a strategic location with a panoramic view, and it was very easily defended, being located on a promontory surrounded by water on all 3 sides. As you can see, Carrick-a-Breckie Castle was in a ruinous state. There we have a picture of the keep and the remains just in front of it. There we have it from the south side, and our lead archaeologist, Richard Crumlish. You can see, I mean, it's actually dangerous to be standing underneath that. And just there you can see barely the remains of the Round Tower. And in fact, during the winter of 2012, if you can remember back to the winter of 2012, it was really absolutely treacherous. Wind, rain, and we had all the elements. And if it hadn't been for the steel beams and the scaffolding supporting the remains of the keep and the Round Tower, we believe that in 2013 we would have been left with just a pile of stones. It looks very majestic there with the scaffolding surrounding it. It looks a bit like a spaceship. And we also have the other advantage of the natural phenomena of the blowhole there, which comes into full spate twice a day. The committee had various surveys done, but it was agreed that what we would conserve as a ruin was the 16th century keep and the later addition of the 17th century Round Tower. And obviously that was in conjunction with a conservation architect, an engineer, and a team of archaeologists. In fact, one of the archaeologists you might see quite soon. Carrick-a-Brackie Castle is also known locally as the Castles. And in this Hollar Parsons map of 1661, you can see Carrick-a-Brackie Castle here. And if I just home in on that, we get a greater indication of the size of Carrick-a-Brackie Castle and how politically and strategically important it is. And we see here it consists of a keep located within a bawn wall along which there are a number of towers, I think about 7 towers. And so Hollars of Hollar Parsons was known for his great accuracy in his maps. Some people have said, oh well look, this might have just been a political reaction to show Carrick-a-Brackie as a much larger fort. But we don't think so. We think that it was actually a much larger castle altogether. Carrick-a-Brackie, we managed to conserve the keep at just under 250,000 euros. And a lot of people have said to me, but sure, it's only that small keep and that round tower. At the end of the day, I have said to people, I will never work on a building again unless it has right angles all around it. The location of Carrick-a-Brackie Castle is there are sheer drops right into the sea, and our builders risked life and limb on a daily basis because it was really quite frightening. The number of reports that had to be generated for national monuments was immense, but we got funding from the Heritage Council. The majority of the funding came from the LEADER programme administered by Inishowen Development Partnership. But it was a community project, and the local community, and I include Buncrana in this, came together for our dances. On average, we would be raising maybe, with every dance that we had, a couple of thousand. And this gave us publicity as well. And it also empowered the local community to get involved with the project as well. They became interested in the history, and this was something that they had known the place was there, but this was a time to bring their children and to involve the whole family as well. And we also had the great honour on National Monuments said that Carrick-a-Brackie, in terms of the archaeology, the engineering, the conservation, architecture work, was the best practice local community project in Ireland. And it was great that not only something from Donegal, but it was from Inishowen was being held up by National Monuments as best practice. And it was great to have National Monuments speaking in Dublin and telling other people in Dublin that it's all happening in Inishowen. And the best practice went further in that normally you would have to wait for National Monuments to visit you, and that can take them up to 6 months before they make a visit, because they trusted the work of the people who were involved. They were ticking boxes much faster. So it was a great honour to have that. Now, I'd like to introduce you to the people who made this project happen, our builders. And as you know, here's another shared connection. It's all very tribal in Inishowen and O'Doherty's and Doherty. And even though we went through e-tendering, we were in a great position that we had a local builder. The Stone Basin to the left-hand side here, Seamus Doherty and our builder. He had no experience, John Doherty of John Eddy Brothers. He had no previous conservation building experience, but he practiced for a couple of months with National Monuments and with our conservation architect, and became really proficient. In fact, there was one, after having a dreadful winter, we had a really hot summer, and he could be applying up to 5 different lime water formulations in one day. And as he lived nearby, he was able to cycle down at midnight and hose down the lime water that he had already applied earlier that day. Otherwise, the heat would just have made it crumble or do something like that. So he went beyond the call of duty. And here again is another great story that someone who was interested in history and conservation but hadn't had the requisite experience is now working on lots of local conservation projects. This is part of our archaeology team, and you will recognise to the left there John Hegarty, a local archaeologist, and in the middle Richard Crumlish, originally from Carn, and Rosemary Molden, originally Doherty, and that was October 2012, I believe, and you can see that they're dressed appropriately because that location, when the elements come in, the wind, the rain, everything was coming in horizontally, and there was very little shelter, John, I think you'll recall, and that's it. So there are the records. This is something that I love this photograph. Here we have the stonemason, Seamus Doherty, and he is measuring the circumference of the round tower with a piece of string. With all the technology we have today, here he is measuring the circumference with a piece of string, probably in exactly the same way they measured the circumference of the round tower when it was built in the 17th century. And just before I go on here, yes, we had quite a number of archaeological finds, but this one is really very exciting. It's described as Iberian pottery shards, and this would have come from Spanish, Portuguese amphora, and this would have been used for olives, for storing olives, wine, olive oil and fish. And to find this at Carrigabrachy Castle, you think, where on earth did this come from? Well, if you think of, if we go 20, as the crow flies, 20 miles round the bay, we arrive in Kinnigo Bay. And in 1588, the Trinidad Valancera went down. It was one of the largest ships in the Spanish Armada, and when it went down, it had a really large cargo. And we do know that Sir Cather's father, Sir John Shawno, was actually imprisoned for refusing to give up the cargo of the Trinidad Valancera, and this is actually documented. So it really amuses me that, you know, in the late 16th century, down at Carrigabrachy Castle, they were feasting on olives, fine wines, olive oil, fish, goodness knows what else. They were probably eating a better menu in the late 16th century than we are today on the Isle of Doe. And so I just think this is wonderful how archaeology can bring things back to life. The other thing that was wonderful, and I know John can probably tell you later, but the lead archaeologist, Richard Crumlish, had said to me that when all the work was going on, it was a bit like the Time Team. Remember that programme, archaeology programme that used to be on Channel 4? And people would jog past and they would stop and say, what is going on? And tell me more about the project. And just by simply being there, you know, people's curiosity was roused and they started to get interested in the history of the whole thing. but that, I think, is a great find. So Carrickferbrackey Castle has now been conserved as a ruin, and O'Doherty's Keep Conservation Group are just about to embark on their journey. And so again, our shared connection of conservation. And it's really exciting for Carrickferbrackey Castle because O'Doherty's Keep is an O'Doherty Castle as well. And again, it's bringing, history to life again. So we wish them all the best on their future project. Just to remind you what a ruinous state Carrickferbrackey Castle was in 2011. And here we have Carrickferbrackey Castle, conserved as a ruin. And I mean, the difference is quite incredible. And the one thing is, given the elements and the location, it is weathering really well, and it looks fantastic. And there we have it with the blowhole going in full speed. We were really lucky in September of 2014. This was a real icing on the cake when President Michael D. Higgins visited Carrickferbrackey Castle. And he trained as an archaeologist, so it was wonderful. And I was really proud of our building team because he started asking them really difficult questions about the lime-water mix, how they applied it, and they were able to answer all the questions. So it was a great moment for the whole team. And there I am talking to him and explaining something. And this is the actual sign that we have down in Carrickferbrackey. And it really is a synopsis of what the castle looked like in 1802. It gives a brief history. And also he was very interested in the size of the castle. What was even more interesting, before he arrived, I was getting about 10-15 phone calls a day. He had researched the whole history, he knew everything about it. And if he spends that much research, it is absolutely incredible. Little old Carrickferbrackey Castle, and he was really interested in that. So that was a great day for the whole community on the island Doe. Also, we have been blessed in recent years by the Aurora Borealis. And doesn't Carrickferbrackey look absolutely wonderful? And I got a phone call from somebody in Belfast one evening when we had the first Aurora Borealis, and they said, listen, you're on television, Carrickferbrackey's on television. I could hardly believe it. I mean, this became so commonplace that I would look out, we actually live on the island, we would look out and say, sure, we'll go down tomorrow night, because you could nearly guarantee that, that this was going to happen. So we've been very lucky. So Carrickferbrackey Restoration Society have now stabilised the castle and preserved it for future generations. It's actually a microcosm of Irish history where school children can be brought and told about their ancestors. Apart from the social, cultural and educational value to the local community, it is a great tourist attraction. And this is probably important for all local communities. Fáilte Island has identified cultural tourism as one of the most important factors in attracting tourists who will not only spend more but will stay longer in the place they are visiting. I am sure O'Doherty's Keep, as with Carrickferbrackey Castle, will become a landmark site for international and local visitors alike, wishing to see more of the built heritage that I am shown. Thank you very much.